And we are live. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, Remake Learning. It is a beautiful Thursday here in southwestern Pennsylvania, and we are being joined with friends from halfway across the world from Finland. We're going to get started. Excuse me, the coffee has not kicked in yet, apparently. We're going to be getting started in just a few minutes, as always. While you wait, a few comfort notes. The session, as always, is being recorded and will be posted to the Remake Learning YouTube channel with subtitles early next week. You are encouraged to use Twitter and Facebook to comment and ask questions, and we'll answer as time allows. And while you're waiting, please click over to remakelearning.org/join to review the network norms and values, as we won't be going through them here today. We're going to get started in just about 30 more seconds. And welcome to a Thursday morning edition of Tomorrow. Good morning once again. My name is Ani Martinez. I am the Field Director for the Remake Learning Network here in southwestern Pennsylvania and northern West Virginia. This conversation is brought to you by Tomorrow, a campaign powered by Remake Learning. For those who are unfamiliar with our work, Remake Learning is a network that ignites engaging, relevant, and equitable learning practices in support of young people navigating rapid social and technological change. We've been doing this work since 2007, and 2020 has been an utmost reminder that it is our duty as a community, as an ecosystem, and as a network to double down on our commitment to helping every learner, family, and community flourish in ways that are justice-oriented and transformational. We do this by focusing on the most forward-facing methods while staying embedded and true to the foundations of teaching and learning through caring relationships. Tomorrow is an opportunity for us to ask questions. What will the possible futures of tomorrow bring in the face of radically different and unknown futures? How do we prepare children and youth to thrive while staying grounded in what's timeless? And how do we make tomorrow a more promising place for all learners by acting today? We hope you'll continue to join us through October 20th as we embark on more storytelling, more events, particularly October 5th for our Celebrate Ed Gala. You can register today, as well as our Remake Learning Days Across America kickoff on October 13th, as well as more conversations every Thursday, professional development, and exchanging life lessons and conversations. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you ever want to learn more about Remake Learning, please send an email over to our info@ account and you can schedule time to chat with me. It is now my absolute pleasure to welcome Lasse Leponiemi as our special guest for today's Tomorrow conversation. Lasse, welcome. Hello.
Thank you, and greetings from not as far from tomorrow, but from your future, because it's already late afternoon here in Finland. So great to be spending some morning hour with you guys. So living the life of déjà vu in a way at the moment.
That was a perfect introduction, Lasse. Have you been saving that in your pocket for just today?
Yeah, just I kept it from you. So I think like it's always good to have some small surprises in the beginning of an interview.
That's why they pay you the big bucks, why you're such good friends of Remake Learning. And one of the many reasons why we wanted to bring you on for one of our Thursday conversations. HundrED has been a tremendous champion of Remake Learning and Remake Learning Days across America. Can you tell us more about the organization, please?
Yeah, with a great pleasure. And to start with, I would say that Remake Learning has been a champion for itself. So we have been just featuring the great work you have been doing. But HundrED as an organization, we are coming from Finland, so we are Finland-based, a non-profit organization working for future of education. So we identify education innovations around the world, and we believe that improved education at scale, we should be looking for impactful and scalable education innovations, which can be then implemented in different education divisions, education providers, and schools around the world to help every child flourish. So in long term, we hope that every child in the world would have access to the best possible educational solutions and practices. And to do so, we try to feature the ones who are the best, like Remake Learning.
Well, that's very kind, very humbling. In Remake Learning, we like to borrow a more common expression that creativity is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And I believe that that is a philosophy that HundrED shares and also has the opportunity to be exploring on a very global level. What sort of trends and noticings have you had on that global scale over the past several months?
Oh my.
It's a big question, I know.
Yeah. So during the last 5 years, we have been going through over 5,000 educational innovations, which are focusing on K-12 education only. So we have been looking at different levels, different sections of the education, and like you were mentioning, the equality as a part of education is one of the key values or things we keep very close to our heart, because even though we have students who are coming from different kind of background, different kind of families, they might be as knowledgeable and as skillful compared to each other, but one of them is seeing that there is a lot of potential in them and they can see themselves doing wonderful things in life. But at the same time, someone else who would have the same capacity of learning and doing things might be feeling that I'm not good enough for this. I'm not kind of up for this kind of learning. And I believe that through education, we are able to balance the societies and balance the world in a way that students could be equipped with the skills and equipped with the courage to do things they love and find passion about. And I think that is the main reason what kind of gets me up in the morning, that we are able to feature those educational solutions and practices which are doing their little share to make the world of education better. And I cannot find anything else what would be more meaningful than that.
One of the things that I love so much about HundrED and the way you write about the future of teaching and learning is how careful and how much attention you pay to the word innovation. And I thought that this was particularly true of the most recent report, which you can find the link to that in the chat, was how much you talk about the research that goes into cultivating an innovative mindset. Can you talk more about how you see educators cultivating an innovator's mindset?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think let's start with the word innovation as it is. So there, of course, innovation is coming, the term of innovation is coming on, and it's a lot of use in business literature and business related research, where we are trying to identify those new success stories and possibilities to create maybe a new companies with and so forth. And when we are kind of taking that kind of language into field of education, it might be sounding quite alarming to many. And especially in a Finnish context, we have been having a lot of discussion about neoliberalism as a part of education world, that we are kind of starting to use business language when we are describing how education is provided and how we are providing those possibilities for our learners. And at the same time, in many cases, innovation as a word has been used when, for example, budget cuts or this kind of reductions have been made in the education field. So that might have led into a situation that innovation as a word is having a little bit of bad reputation among education, because people might be feeling oh my, Are they going to cut our budget? Are they going to take something away? But we believe that innovation for us is something that we are doing something what is important in a little bit different but better way. And innovations are not always new. They can be also something which have been around for quite a long time, but they are providing better learning results. And in our HundrED context, we are only focusing on K-12 education, so from kindergarten until the 12th grade, and trying to identify solutions and practices which are helping our learners and educators to do the best what they can be doing in a classroom and with their learning experience. So we are not kind of like seeing that innovations are something which are kind of like capitalizing the education. We are seeing that innovations are something which are bringing something better and something good for teachers and students who are in the classrooms every day. So that's to start with. And then when you were mentioning about the latest report, so we were publishing last week a report about innovation-friendly ecosystems in education, and especially looking public education systems. So the important thing is that we would be finding and like for us, the innovation-friendly ecosystem is something which is eager to identify the challenges and needs and then finding solutions for those, because those solutions are the small innovations which can take us forward. And we think that it's very important that we are keeping that curious mind to find the new solutions and ways to improve things at scale. And that is where the public education system comes into a play. Dear friend and Finnish professor Pasi Salperi was saying once that it's relatively easy to create an excellent school if you just have loads of money, you hire the best teachers, you build a beautiful location, and then you are kind of like delivering the education at its finest peak. But what is much more difficult is that how on a public education you are able to provide equal possibilities for students which are coming from various of backgrounds, and you have to be able to cope with all of those aspects with the less amount of resources.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that it was fascinating to read about how adaptability and a cohesive strategy to adapt innovations in a more nimble way is so present in Finnish culture. But it was very interesting to learn more about how the lack of competition can sometimes stagnate the drive for innovation. Can you talk a little bit more about that and where you see fervent drive for innovation, maybe globally, happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's true that if the education system is very strong and it is providing a lot of support and a lot of these kind of factors, it might make the innovations less visible inside of that system and or less needed in a way, because the system itself is it's providing good results in this very particular moment. But what is very kind of like essential part of the Finnish education system and the way how we are thinking about it is that we are always planning for the future. So the latest curriculum came out in 2016, but we are already now planning the next one, which is coming in a few years' time. And I think that is the essential part, that we are adaptable to the new situations, and we are kind of like dealing with them as they come, and not kind of like postponing the decisions. We should be experimenting and trying new things all the time. And now, if we think about the last 6 months, the systems which have been more eager to adapt themselves to new situations, which have had more open dialogue about different kind of possibilities or threats, how to kind of like provide education in the future, have been more successful in adapting to the situation when school had to be closed, or we have been dealing with different issues coming from the pandemic as a part of the situation we are dealing with the world at the moment.
Yeah, and I know that you are interested and think a lot about the way that a school can learn, right? How much of that is tied to adaptability and perhaps might be a means of transforming, right, from an old paradigm into a post-COVID context.
Yeah, so one of the things I find interesting is is the like how the leadership on a school level, on education division level, is providing learning possibilities not only for the students but also for educators and principals who are kind of like executing the curriculum and making the school function in the best possible way. And I think we should be talking more about that, like what is the learning cycle which is happening inside of the school, how the experimenting culture is part of the work the school is doing. Are the teachers and students allowed to try new things? How the feedback is collected from those, and how the school is deciding on a school level what kind of new initiatives should be taken forward, because that is also the struggle our education innovators are sometimes facing. They have something very dear for them. They have been innovating and creating a new solution for classrooms, for example. And then what is the process, how an interested school can experiment with that idea, and then maybe later on make a decision that it's something they want to stick with and start implementing to all the classes. So schools and education providers should have some kind of functions which are always looking for new solutions, always kind of like thinking what kind of things could be part of our education in future.
Yeah, so in a school culture, you're talking about creating the conditions for educators and students and young people to.
Yes, and it should be based on values and trust. So we know that some of the ideas don't work. There might have been a good, like the idea might have come with a good-hearted mind in a way that we are hoping to achieve something great, but then the idea falls short. It's not delivering the results we expected in the beginning, or there is some factors which are not working as planned. And but what is kind of like the process, how we are measuring it, that we know that okay, this actually delivering the better results than we were believing in the beginning. And I think that is important to notice, and also have this kind of acceptance on a school and school level, that some of the ideas we are trying out, they might be failures, or maybe we are not even calling them as a failures, but we are calling them as an experiments where we learn something and then we carry on. We pick up the next idea based on the iteration or based on the experience we had earlier. And that is the way how we are able to create the learning cycle or learning loop, how the work can progress in long term.
And I know that we wanted to talk about data and assessment during this conversation, but before we do that, while we're still talking more about school culture and cultivating innovative school cultures, how do you see globally, perhaps, or even in the Finnish context, educators who've been around, right? They've seen trends come and go, and there's very much this, well, I lived through it when it was called this kind of learning, and now that we've rebranded it, how do you see that coming up on the global? Do you see that coming up on the global stage?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question. So if we are, I think it was 2018, we published a report called Every Child Flourish, and in that report we were researching like how students and teachers were finding finding the ways education systems are improved, and what should we look into. And one of the findings of that report was that the teachers who have been teaching between, I hope I will get this right, from 5 to 10 years are the ones who are most excited to try new things as a part of their teaching practice. And I think like the reason for that is that like when you are just starting as a teacher, you have to put a lot of emphasis like to your lesson plans, how you are delivering the classes, like how you are dealing with the interaction in the classroom, and how you are finding your own way of teaching and so forth. But when you have been doing that for some years and you are starting to repeat the same lesson plans, you are kind of like more eager to find out new ways how you can improve the results in your classroom. And if you are kind of like stepping into that zone, that you are starting to challenge yourself and you are starting to implement new things as a part of your teaching, then you will continue throughout your career. But then if you are not kind of like taking that leap and putting yourself into that uncomfort zone every now and then to find out new things and find out like what you can improve as a part of your own practice, then it might be getting more difficult when you have to adapt to something new, like happened, for example, during the last spring. So we were seeing that some teachers who were already have been using a lot of online and distance learning tools, it was not such a big jump for them to jump into that kind of a world. But the ones who had been resistant about that one and saying like, no, I want to keep going the way I have been keep going, the jump was enormous. Like nobody can take that kind of a big leap in a blink of time, because then you have to be learning so much in such a nick of time. So for that reason, I think it's extremely important, not only for teachers, but everyone who are, doing whatever profession they are part of, that we are challenging ourselves and we are putting ourselves into that life learning mode and learning new things. And well, frankly, that is also something we are expecting our students to do.
We are, and you said, and what I heard was something fascinating to me, was that you used the words continuous learning, risk, and challenge somewhat interchangeably in there. And I think that there's a deep lesson to be learned in the face of a learning environment that is trending towards personalization. And I'm hoping that you might talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are not, as a teacher, if you are not willing to take risks sometimes, how can you ask your students to do so? And what I feel important is that when we are creating an environment of learning, and the environment of learning can happen wherever. It happens on a workplaces, it happens at home, it happens in a classroom, it happens, by the sports field. So when you are creating a culture and environment where people can feel somewhat safe, somewhat encouraged to take those steps forward and to challenge themselves and learn new things, then beautiful things can start happening. And when we are saying this, we have to also remember that learning is never easy. It's frustrating. It's something that where you are kind of like feeling bad about yourself, like, oh man, I have been trying to do this so many times. I'm still not able to pronounce word squirrel well enough in English. And I think I will keep that as my dark secret for the rest of my life. But still you have to be pushing yourself into that direction to be able to do something what you love and to get forward.
Yeah, I'd like to shout out an American-based organization, the Connected Learning Alliance, which has been outlining that trifecta of student passion and drive connected to peer mentorship and access to opportunity, is very much that model and that framework. Also, you said the word squirrel perfectly. Just so
Quite all right. I have been trying, I have been practicing for a long time. There are two words which are completely impossible for me. One of them is square.
Square.
Yeah, and then the another one is this stupid small animal which is stealing things.
I saw a big one in my yard just this morning. So yes,
Yes, don't leave anything outside.
And you're getting some laughter in the chat as well. And looking at the chat, I do see a question. Are you all right with taking a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, how does Finnish education approach the values of autonomy and self-determination?
So first of all, in Finland, we have a lot of autonomy for teachers. I could actually briefly explain the system, how it works. So on a national level, we are having national curriculum, and that is more kind of a like guidelining document about all the things you should be learning in a primary education. And then on a municipality level, which is just below, then they are able to adapt that national curriculum to the local needs. So for example, if you are from eastern part of Finland, then you might be having more Russian related study than in the other parts of Finland, where you might be finding Swedish more useful as a language, just as an example. And then on a school level, that curriculum, which has been agreed on a municipal level, will be then further adapted to the local needs. And when the teacher is in the classroom, they have a pretty much full autonomy, like how they are kind of like delivering the learning experience as a part of their class. Of course, it has to be based on the curriculum items. But for example, in Finland, it's quite rare that we would see lesson plans which are having mentions that the first 5 minutes do this, then 10 minutes have this task with your students, and then blah, 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 blah. So it's more kind of like something that the teachers are thinking together with themselves or with the colleagues, and they are sharing those lesson plans, and they are kind of like quite collaborative in that matter. And while I'm saying this, I still remember one time meeting a very good history teacher. We were discussing about collaboration as a part of teaching. And I remember how this teacher took that USB stick out of his pocket and said like, listen, young man, on this USB stick, I have all my lesson plans, all my slides, all my tests. Why would I share this with someone who is coming to our school? Because it's making me to be less. And I'm quite happy that that kind of thinking is kind of like slowly going away completely. And also on a school level, we are kind of like having a more collaborative culture where people are like, yes, of course, I'm happy to share this with you, because then we can share our expertise and knowledge to each other, and maybe I can learn something from you as well. So it's it's not a one-way road. So it's more dialogue-based way of doing things, and I believe that is also the reason why we have been traditionally able to provide quite equal learning results across Finland in all primary schools.
Do you think that autonomy of teachers does translate into the autonomy of individual students? There's a follow-up question in the chat to this effect.
Oh, that's a tricky one. I believe yes and no. I would say that is more dependable of the teaching style of the teacher. So in a perfect world, we are hoping that the Finnish, like first of all, in the latest curriculum, we introduce multidisciplinary subjects, which are going across all the traditional ones, and those are kind of like tying different subjects together, and which are making it easier for students to use project-based learning methods. And when they are learning based on the projects or the phenomena they are seeing in the close environment, and tying up their learnings with those, then there is more autonomy available. And of course, when we are thinking about the different grades, the higher we go, the bigger is the amount of autonomy that students are having. But you are kind of like building that gap. If we would be visiting grades 1 to 3, you might have you might give that kind of like possibility for students to make decisions by themselves, but you are narrowing down the possibilities where they can select from. So you might be asking, for example, would you like to start the day by reading or doing math? So you are kind of like starting to build up that capacity of doing decisions to make you learning more autonomous and and using the self-determination of the students to build that capacity. And of course, then it's a lot to do with the teacher's professionalism, that you are, keeping a track that someone is not able to skip all the math lessons and only focus on reading, or other way around, but that you are kind of like having equal amount of, maybe not hours, but you are learning the equal, like the amount of things the curriculum is asking you to learn, because then that also gives you a pathway for the personalized learning. If somebody's quicker to learn reading, but math takes more time, then why not to use more time for math when that kind of structure is allowing that?
It's are you familiar with the choose your own adventure story model?
No, I'm not.
It's typical. Well, when I was a kid, you would get children's books that you would get to a certain page of the novel, and then it would say, if you want to do this action, go to this page. If you want to not do that action, then you go to another. And that was the sort of example that came to mind when you were talking about that model of choosing a pathway through the narrative, but still accomplishing end results that get you through the story, right? And the way that we teach in terms of stories becomes so top of mind for me, that we're teaching skills and knowledge which form these social narratives in really interesting ways, at least to me. And I think that the way that we are thinking about automating data and algorithmic learning is very much relevant here. Like, what does an algorithmic learning model look like? And I think people get very afraid of that. But are you seeing algorithmic learning models or personalized learning models crop up?
Well, first of all, I want to say that you have been experiencing nice ways of learning, because I think my mother used more methods of bribing and threading in a combination, which eventually got me through the school. But yeah, going to the data discussion, it's a tricky one, because if we are looking standardized data which we are getting on a school level, that doesn't tell us almost at all what is happening. It tells about, it doesn't tell us much about what is happening, if anything, what is happening on actual classroom level. And therefore I would be quite careful how we are treating the data to assess performance or quality of the schools. So for example, like, I would be more interested to know always, like, okay, so what is the level of the students when they are getting in, and what is the level of them when they are getting out? And then if you are only looking at, for example, data what is coming from standardized tests, is that really helpful? Because we know that we can also manipulate those test results in a way that we are only making students to learn things which have been usually asked in that kind of tests. In some cases, we can call that as a PISA doping. So that, for example, schools are using old PISA tests to build up the capacity of students to answer to that specific kind of questions. And it doesn't make our students to grow too much in other fields of life than learning how to answer PISA tests, if you follow my line of thought here. But then what I would be more interested in is to kind of like think about the small data. And there have been also some innovations which have been doing a great work in this sector. And this kind of data can, for example. Did I cut out?
You cut out when you were saying this kind of data, ...
Okay, so this kind of small data could be extremely helpful, for example, for principals and teachers when they are improving the way the school operates. As an example, there was one Finnish school using innovations called School Day, which lets you to ask from your students how they are feeling when they are coming to the school in the morning. What they realized that there were a certain amount of students who were often feeling hungry on Monday mornings. So what they decided to do is that they decided to offer breakfast packages on Monday mornings, and all of a sudden some frustration went down in the classrooms. Students were able to focus better on the tasks on hand and so forth. But you wouldn't have received that kind of data from a normal test you could run with your students.
And so that's interesting, Lasse, because what I'm hearing is you're looking at data on this smaller, more local scale.
Yeah.
But then we also want to scale innovations or methods on a much grander systems level. And so how do you or how does HundrED reconcile those very small scale methods and practices and really looking at them on the systems level?
Mm-hmm. I think we should always start from the student level. So the learning is always, the learning is always happen within one student, and that one student has a feeling that the educational experiences he or she has been experiencing has been helpful or they have not. So whatever solutions or practices we are using as a part of delivering the education, we should be always looking at how well that can be scaled to these classrooms so that every student is benefiting from them. And when we are kind of like having that understanding, then we can start replicating the model. We can start scaling it up so that more classrooms can be joining and so forth. So I don't believe that it's especially in a democratic country where people are voting and people are remember to vote, when people are voting and they are kind of like creating the systems together. It's very difficult that you are giving an order on the top level and saying like this is something you should be implementing if the grassroots level is not feeling or seeing what is the benefit of that specific innovation, or even understanding what is the need or demand why we should be implementing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are kind of like seeing that on a grassroots level, an innovation can provide beautiful results, then the next step is that we should have a common understanding. Is this kind of better results needed on a larger scale? Would this be helpful for larger amount of students? And if we are able to share that similar feeling that yes, this is something where we should be focusing on, then we can start scaling it up. And then also what comes through that decision is that the teachers across the school or across the city are feeling that they are doing something important and something which is making things better for their students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that's a very simple and profound observation. Would the innovation even be helpful on a larger
Exactly.
scale? Yeah.
Exactly, because that's a helpful observation, because we have to know whether or not the idea is working or not. So we should have that experimenting culture, and then we have some kind of like criteria what we are expecting to get out of the innovation, what kind of results we are aiming for, and so forth. If you are reaching those results, great. Let's think if others can also enjoy and benefit from this. If not, then let's try something else.
And also inspired, please do register to vote. Yesterday was America's National Register to Vote Day. It's not too late, everybody. But that also reminds me of how much noise and how many competing ideas of what is a solution are floating around in our education sector. And Greg Bear has a beautiful, as always, question talking about the fact that there is so much noise right now about the future of learning. And we saw a spike in this conversation when the pandemic really started to affect schools and teaching and learning. To which organizations, Lasse, are you paying special attention to? And what ideas do you anticipate might gain genuine and actual traction?
It's good that Craig is having easy questions in the morning. So I agree that there is a lot of noise, and if you were following social media and media all together during those months last spring, every organization, HundrED included, were publishing like COVID toolkits and resources and so forth. So it will become extremely difficult for an individual teacher or school to select something what could be helpful or good for them, because there is so much where to choose from. And then at the same time, many of these organizations were also saying like, now because we are dealing with the pandemic, we are giving these tools for you for free. But we also know that there is no free lunch available. So then you were kind of like having your information over there, and you have been receiving the marketing materials afterwards and hoping, and they have been hoping that some people would convert to be actual paying customers. And I think that's fair if that has been helping some of these educators and teachers to provide something meaningful for their class. But we should be always paying attention what are kind of like the actual reasons behind our decisions when we are selecting something that we would like to try out as a part of education, because we should also keep eye on the rights of our students and how we are protecting their privacy and so forth. So we saw this massive leap on the distance learning and online related learning during the last spring, and I believe that this kind of like hybrid method where we are combining online distance learning with actual physical learning taking place in a school classrooms is here to stay. It won't go away, and I hope that many organizations and schools would have seen this as an opportunity to push towards flipped classrooms, where you are able to deliver those lectures and lessons online, and then have more resources for helping students with the questions they are having and so forth. So I hope that this will accelerate this kind of student-centered way of learning for the future. Then answering to the second question, like which are the organizations we have been looking at and we have been working with. We were very privileged in that situation to be able to collaborate together with OECD, World Bank, and Harvard. And what I find interesting is that, for example, when we are at the moment categorizing the education innovations we identify around the world, we are also categorizing the origin of the innovation based on the World Bank's economical spectrum, meaning like what is the capacity and infrastructure of the country where it is coming from, because education is always very context related and contextual. So you are not able to scale innovations easily from totally different context to somewhere else, and then at the same time, sometimes when we are looking at these countries which are dealing with less infrastructure, we are able to identify beautiful ways which would be also very much working in more wealthy countries or with the countries with the higher infrastructure. So it's very difficult to say what would where the innovation is being implemented or where it is coming from. So for that reason, we are looking different organizations to understand the context where the education is being provided. And World Bank and OECD is doing excellent work to categorize and providing that kind of contextual help for us to identify the innovations. But then how we are able to identify all the solutions we are providing, we are actually very proud to be able to work with our huge network of 100 ambassadors and country leads. So we have over 600 ambassadors around the world from over 100 countries, and they are the ones who are able to identify and point out interesting innovations to our direction, and then we hope that we are able to echo that to the larger community, so that those innovations would be known.
Mm-hmm. And networks and social capital are one of the areas that HundrED outlines for its ambassadors, which I appreciate very much as well. Doing that sharing is obviously something that is very important to my practice and to the Remake Learning practice as well. And so what I'm hearing is a great place to see what organizations, what individuals is in fact the HundrED website and the HundrED reports. They are indeed a treasure trove to look at that cutting edge of teaching and learning. Is there a step? Go ahead, Lasse.
It's like a rabbit hole where you can jump and then never find your way out. So there is, I believe we have 1,300 innovations published at the moment on the system. Not all of those are reviewed by us. So we select usually annually like around 200 innovations, and the information of those is checked by our research team. And anyone who is having an educational innovation can submit the innovation to our database, and then we might be contacting you and asking further information if it's something that we are looking for in one of our projects.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about that work, the work of World Bank, so on, so much of what HundrED does is cultivate a sense of global community around the future of teaching and learning. Is there a way for someone who might not be brought into the fold to listen in and to get involved in HundrED?
Yes. So if you are education enthusiast or you find yourself as one, please join us, join our HundrED community. It's open for everyone. And then if you want to get more involved, then we have the ambassador program, and we organize a ton of webinars in a year and different kind of occasions where you are able to be part of the community. And I think like the most beautiful things we are seeing happening at the moment is that like when people are starting to discuss or asking help in our community, and then someone is replying and relationship is being formed, and then knowledge is being shared, and I hope that we would be able to do that even more, and especially like with educators who are excited to take their work forward. And we all know that when we are out there innovating and creating something new, sometimes it might be feeling as a lonely thing to do, and what I'm extremely happy about is that like we are bringing these enthusiastic people together and providing a platform for them where they can work together and share their knowledge together across country borders.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and social media is not to be underestimated as a space to engage in that conversation and ask those questions. And you can always, of course, email us at our info@ account, particularly if you are in Southwestern Pennsylvania or the West Virginia and want to learn more. We are a resource here to help get you access to beautiful resources like HundrED. And so we are really short on our time, and we've talked about how schools learn. We've talked about data obsession, small data, big data, and we've talked about so many things. And we've also talked about innovation, why it matters, how we are seeing schools adopt innovation culture. Thinking about all these things amidst living your life in 2020, looking at innovations globally, I'm very excited to hear more about what you think your preferred future of teaching and learning looks like.
Well, at least we are having some sort of a plans of that in beginning of November. So the thing about our name HundrED, it comes from the fact that every year we are publishing our global collection, which, surprise, surprise, includes 100 education innovations. And the next global collection will be revealed in the beginning of November. On 4th of November, the global collection for 2021 will be revealed. And if you are interested in joining, I know it will be most likely quite early mornings for you listening this discussion. But if you are excited to join about that or join into that, head to our website and register for summit. So then you will be also the first to know how we are seeing the future of education taking place next year. And what I'm hoping to happen on a personal level is that that we would be paying a lot of attention to social and emotional well-being of our students now when we are moving forward. And hopefully on one beautiful day, this pandemic is behind of us, and we are able to be in a normal rhythm in our schools. I believe that we have to be not only taking care of our students, but also our teachers and other community members who are working with the schools, because this situation has been stressful for many of us. It might have been building anxiety and so forth. But I am also fully confident that with the collaboration and together, we can come out stronger and more compassionate about our colleagues and students we are able to work with every day. So that is something I'm hoping and expecting to happen within the next year or so.
Yes, that sense of community care is something that we practice daily in our context and can never be overemphasized as a way of moving us through and beyond these, in at least our context, the twin pandemics that have been emergent in the United States. So I have registered my ticket for the summit. I am very much looking forward to learning more and seeing what the future of 2021 will look like in partnership with our global brothers and sisters. As always, Lasse, thank you so much for the work you do to champion research-backed, innovative, equitable approaches to teaching and learning in your context and throughout the rest of the world. It is truly appreciated. And as a member of the Remake Learning team, I want to just express my deep gratitude for all you have done to amplify our work on the global stage. It means so very much to us and to our community, to the dozen organizations that you spotlight in the Pittsburgh spotlight as well. Thank you very, very much. We hope that you and others will continue to join us and to celebrate from now through October. Hold the dates for October 5th as we celebrate teachers and educators from across the sector for our Celebrate Ed. You can register now. We're also launching our Remake Learning Days Across America kickoff. That will be October 13th. And we hope that you will keep an eye out for those events, because we will be joining forces with HundrED once again for some upcoming spotlights and reports in 2020. Lasse, anything else you'd like to leave us with, closing thoughts?
First of all, thank you for this inspiring discussion. This was great way for me to end my workday and hopefully for you to start yours. And like you were mentioning, please register for that celebrated event. It was a great pleasure to be part of it last year and hang around with the parrot on the stage. And I hope that we will meet soon in person and everyone have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners. Please join us next week as Dr. Bettina Love joins Dean Valerie Kinlock in conversation about the future of teaching and learning. Everyone, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Happy weekend and happy autumn, everyone. Register to vote. It's really good to see you. Bye now.